I don't think it's gonna fall. Hey guys, what's up? So we're gonna be doing something kind of different today. We're gonna put aside the movie commentaries and the rants for today, and I want to talk about something that has been on my mind a lot lately. So last week I was talking to some of my friends who are big fans of Sarah J. Maas, author of the Thorn Glass series and the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, and we were talking about how Sarah J. Maas has very little diversity in her books, and she's written maybe about 14 books at this point. So today I'm going to be talking about basically why diversity in literature is important and why it should be included more in literature if it's not in literature already, and a little like rant about why Sarah J. Maas should include diversity in her books when she really doesn't, especially when they're really long series. So yeah, so you know what? I'm just gonna start off with Sarah J. Maas in general. So if you guys don't know, I have a stack of books beside me, guys. So that's why I'm gonna be reaching over. But if you guys don't know who Sarah J. Maas is, she's the author of the Throne of Glass series. The Throne of Glass series is a series of 8 books. It includes a bind-up of novellas, and then wait, how many books? Seven books. It consists of 7 books. It consists of 7 books. So, I just have to think for a minute. It consists of 7 books. The first 3 being Thorn of Glass, Crown of Midnight, and Heir of Fire. The second half of the series being Queen of Shadows, Empire of Storms, which I have in my hand right now, and it's very big. Tower of Dawn, which was supposed to be a short story, novella short story, but it turned out to be a 700-page novel. And then we have the final book, which just came out last year, called Kingdom of Ash, which is like 1,000 pages. So with Sarah J. Maas's books, I think that she should add so much diversity. She should be adding diversity, especially with this series, just because of the time that we're in now. Basically, I mean, we're like at the end of 2019, so I think we have to have more diversity in literature. But I mean, should we really take out, like, we should all have diversity in books? Diversity should be included in the Throne of Glass series as well as the A Court of Thorns and Roses series on Sarah J. Maas? I don't really think so, just because of the time that Sarah J. Maas started writing the book. Sarah J. Maas wrote Throne of Glass, which is the first book in the Throne of Glass series, when she was 16 years old, and she traditionally got it published by Bloomsbury in 2012. In 2012, no one really cared or talked about needing diversity in literature. And I think that is still very interesting, how like a few years ago people didn't talk about diversity in literature, but now all of a sudden everyone's like, we need these people to be diverse, we need these people to be dark-skinned, not white, we have to have them be different like sexualities, they can't all be straight, even when there are a million characters in her books. Like, we need to have some of them, at least half of the characters, be diverse. Like, that's what I've heard a lot of people say on Twitter, on Instagram, on all different social medias involving Sarah J. Maas's books. Because with this series, it started out, the main character is a white 18-year-old female who's an assassin. And the first introduction that we have with her, she's being led by a white bodyguard / captain of the guard. She's being led into a throne room that is rightfully owned by a white prince of the kingdom, and his dad, the king, is white too. So basically that was where the whole series started. And now I read the first 4 books. Thorn of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Heir of Fire, and Queen of Shadows. in 2016 slash 2017 is when I really read it. And then I started Empire of Storms, and I got maybe like 300 pages into it, and I was not feeling it. It was very boring. It does feel like the filler book in the series just because it's long, and I think within those 300 pages, it's very unnecessary. No offense. But, I mean, a waste of paper right here, if we're being honest. I still haven't finished it. I'll finish it at some point during 2019, maybe 2020. But anyway, with this series, it started off in Throne of Glass with 3 main characters. And now since we're at the 5th book, since I'm at the 5th book currently, and the series has ended and wrapped, basically, she introduced one person of color who is the main character's best friend. She's from a, like, Persian-esque kingdom in this fantasy world that we're in the series. And she gets killed, within the first book, within the first half of the book. She gets killed within the first, well no, I literally said it all wrong. She gets killed in the first half of the 2nd book to further the white main character's story. And I think that's an issue. I think that's a real issue. Just because basically Sarah J. Maas, she said that she had the plot set up for that one character to sacrifice herself so that the main character could find her right birthplace, basically. And she ends up being a queen of this kingdom. So the series tonally takes a shift from the first 2 books to where the next 5 books are very non-existent. They're very much different. In the first 2 books, you're basically in the castle, fighting within this love triangle between the bodyguard and the prince, who's the assassin. Oh yeah, and also she's an assassin. And who's the assassin gonna end up with? And in book 3, it starts off with the main character, the assassin, as this girl who has these elemental abilities that she can use with fire. Fire is her ability, basically. And with this fire ability, she meets within the first chapter of the 3rd book her bodyguard slash mentor trainer guy, who's a fairy, because the series also includes fairies. And he is described as tan-skinned, dark-skinned. And I guess that was a diversity aspect. I guess you could say Sarah J. Maas was diverse there. And then also in that book, back at the castle, the prince falls in love with a dark-skinned woman, a maiden, a Cinderella-esque character. She's a servant, and she gets beheaded within that book. By the start of the book, they're in love and happy and everything. By the end of the book, the servant gets beheaded by the White King. You can see how messed up that is, because basically, Sarah J. Maas killed off a female character's best friend of color and a white main character's female love interest who was also dark-skinned to further two main white character stories, which I find very problematic and very controversial. Because why wouldn't you keep these 2 people of color alive for the entirety of the series? I don't get that. I know it was to further the story and everything, and I know there has to be sacrifice within the series, but it couldn't have come within a later book. It could have came at maybe within book 4 or maybe even book 5. I don't even know what happens in book 5, so who knows. It could have come at book 4, but within the 3rd book, the main female character gets trained, the prince falls in love with the with the black main character. I think she was actually black, which plausible. Good diversity for once in a Sarah J. Maas book. And then the fourth book basically introduces a whole slew of female characters. It's very female empowered, the fourth book, and that's why the fourth book will always stay and always will remain my favorite Throne of Glass book. My favorite Sarah J. Maas book of all time is A Court of Misty Fury, because that's just everything. But within book 3, she also introduces Sarah J. Maas. She also introduces a female character who is a witch, who is the main witch among. I'm back. So yeah, as I was saying before, in book 3 of the Throne of Glass series also, Sarah J. Maas introduced my favorite character, Manon. And Manon is she is an Iron Teeth witch. She's an Iron Teeth witch, which basically means that she has iron teeth and iron claws to basically kill you, and she's described as white. So by book 3, there's like maybe a few people of color in the series, right? And then with book 4, we introduce Nesrin, who is the bodyguard's girl. She's described as like Indian, I want to say. I only ever read those books once. I don't know if I'll reread them, but if I do, I'll let you know. But Nesrin is described as like Indian, and Lysandra, I think she's described as dark-skinned. I'm not sure. But then in book 4, the witches and Manon, they have to hide out in an area called Pereth or Perneth. I don't know what the name is. Wait, hold on. Let me see. They have to hide out in I don't know. There are way too many places to navigate at this point with the series. But we are introduced when Manon and the witches are there, because they're doing experiments on the witches to get them pregnant with demons. You'll find out later when you read the series, if you want to read it. If we're being honest, would I recommend the series? I think I would. I think the first 4 books are really well done. Book 5 is kind of boring, but that is just my personal opinion. But with book 4, Manon and the witches are being experimented on, and within these experiments comes another handmaiden, servant, peasant girl named Alid, who is also one of my favorite female characters in the series. And she is described as having a leg disability, but also being light, like olive skinned, but having a little bit of a dark tone to it, which I think is important to include within the series, not just the color of someone's skin, but also like physical disabilities, like with their legs. She has like cerebral palsy, I want to say. It's never really clarified. It just says like she has a really messed up leg and she can't walk on it. She has to like drag it everywhere. So I'm going to assume it's cerebral palsy. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to assume it's cerebral palsy. And then throughout that story, we see her kind of struggle with the leg disability, which I really appreciate, because I also have a physical disability, which is my vision. I have a vision disability, if you guys didn't know that. And I really appreciated that because I really saw myself in Alid Logan, that's her full name, and she is half witch, half human, and yeah. But overall, with Sarah J. Maas and diversity, I think overall the thing that really comes down to it is, who cares at this point? She's already written 7 books within the Throne of Glass series, and the series is over at this point. And within the first half, she didn't really introduce that many diverse characters. But within the second half, I think she really tried to introduce diverse characters into her stories, just because she got a lot of backlash and criticism for not introducing diverse characters within this whole big series. And by the start of the first book, we only really have 3 main characters at this point, but then by the end of the series, or where I'm at currently, we have maybe 15 main characters, and at least like 2% of them are people of color, and they also have disabilities, which is very important to have. And I think that really shows a lot of growth within her writing, even if the book that I'm currently reading from her is unnecessarily long and it's kind of boring. But I think that really shows improvement within someone's writing. If you want to be diverse from the start, go big or go home. If you want to introduce a queer couple, a mixed race couple, do it from the very first page. Don't do it like halfway through the series. If you get a lot of like flack and criticism and backlash from people for not introducing diverse people or diverse characters in like halfway through a series, because it's already halfway through the series. We're already at book 5 at this point. Don't try to include diverse characters now. You should have like introduced characters at the beginning, I feel like. But if you want to introduce diverse characters, then introduce diverse characters. I'm not gonna judge, but if you want to introduce diverse characters from the start, do it from the start. Don't do it halfway through the series by introducing like 2 or 4. There's at least 4 people of color, and I think most of them are women, so I respect that. But enough with my rant on Sarah J. Maas. When I finish reading Empire of Storms, or when I read it, because I'm not reading it at this moment, I will do a rant review on this, because I'll probably have a lot to say on this. So yeah, but now I'm going to talk about some of the books that do have diversity in them. So the book that I'm currently reading right off the top is a library book that I got from the library, and that is Renegades by Marissa Meyer. I am currently reading this. I'm not that far into it. I mean, I'm a good chunk of the way through. I'm on chapter 13, and I'm 166 pages in. And throughout the book, throughout the first 160 pages that I've read, there is so much diversity already within this story. First of all, it's also a big book. It's like 600 pages, but I'm really enjoying this. It's very generic though. The writing is very basic, but it's really fun and easy and simple to read. But the story is very basic and generic, and I'll probably end up giving this 3 stars anyway. But in this story, we have 2 main characters. The main female character, which I read from a chapter yesterday. I read from the main female character's perspective, and I read from the main male character's perspective. The main female character's perspective, she is described, and I read this yesterday, as being half Italian and half Filipino, and she is the main female character, and this is the first book in a trilogy, and it's a very big book, and it's going to be a very big trilogy. And the series is actually ending soon-ish. I think it ends this month in November, actually. And that's really interesting and important to have. If you want to introduce diverse characters, introduce diverse characters. I mean, like, if you see Marissa Meyer's author photo, you could describe her as white, but she introduces diverse characters, I think, for a reason and for a purpose. I think when you introduce diverse characters at the beginning of a story and they're in the forefront and they're the main characters of a series, you introduce them for reasons. And throughout this book, it's about superheroes and supervillains. And basically, throughout this book, it's very much, what I've read yesterday. From what I read yesterday, it basically talks about the hierarchy between superhero and supervillain, between good and evil, between not oppressive and oppressive people, between non-oppressive people and oppressive people, in a fictionalized setting. The anarchists, who are the villains, they're basically looked down upon. They have really nothing to live for, but they want to keep fighting, and they want to fight for their rights, and that's what the main female character is going to do for them. The main male character is a superhero or a renegade. He is a hero. He has this secret identity that no one knows about, and he was adopted by 2 men, and these 2 men are lovers, and they are gay, and he has 2 dads. He referred to them a few times as his dads, not his dad and this other person. He referred to them as his dad's, which I think is really good and I think is really important to hear from. So we have a gay couple who adopted the main male character, and we have a female character who is half Filipino. So from the start of the book, very diverse. They mention that the main male character was adopted by the two men who are the head council of the Renegades and the head council of the city that they live in, Gatlin City. They mention that within, the main female character mentions that within the first chapter, I think. And I think Marissa Meyer did us right with introducing these two diverse characters. She introduced a mixed race couple because I believe that the main male character is a white man. I assume that he's a white teen, and I'm fine with that, but she introduced a woman of color, a person of color, who is half Filipino, and obviously they're gonna fall in love. It's a YA book, you know. But I think this diversity is really important, and so far, I'm not hating the book, but I'm not loving it. I'm enjoying it for what it is, and yeah, I'll let you know how I feel about it when I do a review on this or when I do a wrap-up. So stay tuned for that. And then I want to talk about some more books that have diversity within them. So we have The Hazelwood. The Hazelwood is a short, fun, fluffy urban fantasy story with a white female main character and a biracial main male character. The biracial main male character within this story, they talk about police brutality and how he has issues with being biracial and how it is more likely that he would get shot. There is a scene in this book where a cop pulls the two main characters over, and the biracial main character, he doesn't want to have confrontation with the officer because he is biracial and he could easily, and he has like the terminology which like basically states that since he knows that he is half black, half white, he's biracial, he could basically get shot. He could easily get shot. But the white female character really doesn't care, and she tells off the police, which is kind of problematic. But I sympathized with the main male character within this scene. I sympathize with the main male character just because she could have made these two, the main author, the author of the book, Melissa Albert, could have just had these two main characters be white, but she had one of them be biracial, and we dive really into the main male character's home life, how his home life really isn't that good, how with him being biracial, it's caused a lot of stereotypes, and it's caused a lot of bullying for him, and I think it's a really important thing to show that you can have a biracial male main character within a story. You can team up a white female and a biracial male, or you could team up two biracial teens who go on this adventure. And I think that's really interesting. And I have some more. We're gonna go through a few more. So I'm just gonna go through this kind of quickly, but with Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nagan. I haven't read this yet, but what I've heard from this book is that it includes many interesting and also important topics to discuss within Asian culture. This book takes place in a Asian-inspired fantasy world that is kind of like China mixed with Japanese influences. And the main female character is Asian. And not only that, but she falls in love with a woman. So we have a queer and lesbian main couple, and that is the main couple within the story. But also within the story, there is the basic main plot of this is that this demon king, he hires these 9 beautiful girls, including this girl, to basically come with him to the castle and be his consorts, basically. So they basically have to have sex with him, but it's not really consensual sex. He basically sexually assaults them. So the author, Natasha Nagan, writes this incredible book that I haven't read yet, but I'm sure I'm really going to enjoy it. She writes this book about very important things, like having a queer slash lesbian main couple in the story. Two women falling in love. How often do you see that in young adult literature? Not really that often. So I think that's really important, but also she introduces a sexual assault main overarching plot throughout this story. You have to overcome the sexual assault. Yeah, it's traumatizing, but it'll take a long time for them to overcome it. And maybe if they don't ever overcome it, at least they have each other to kind of make it seem not as bad as they thought it would have been, because these two women have each other basically. And yeah, I'm really excited to read this. And then with the last few books, these are releases that came out within the past year or two. I'm going to be talking about The Opposite of Always, and this book basically is a time-traveling science fiction contemporary novel with magical realism taking place in our world. And we have a mixed race couple. We have a Spanish, Puerto Rican, Hispanic main male character, and we have a biracial female character who is, I think she's a mix of Hawaiian and Hispanic too. So we have a diverse couple who really try to work things out, and overall it doesn't really work out in the end, but I thought it was really well done to have a diverse couple within a contemporary novel. You never really see that, and I thought that was a really nice thing to have. And they really connected really well in this book. They just bonded over things that they really liked, and I thought that was really incredible. And I think this has been optioned for film, so I'm really interested to reread it or read it, because I read like 350 pages of it and I really enjoyed it, but then I stopped because I got kind of bored by it. But I'm really excited to pick it back up and reread those first 350 pages and see what the ending holds. But as far as I know, the main couple, they really connected and they really felt something for each other. And then the last two books I had to talk about, I'm just going to talk about together. I'm going to talk about A Member of the Ashes. I'm holding up the third book because I gave away my copies of the first and second book. So I have A Reaper at the Gates by Sabaa Tahir, this third book in the A Member of the Ashes series. And then I also have the most hyped book of 2018. That is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. Now these two books are high fantasy novels. They are very diverse, and they're very important books to read. So I'm going to talk about A Reaper at the Gates first. Now here's the thing. I haven't read this third book yet in the series, but this series takes place within this Roman-inspired world. And the main female character, she's dark-skinned, and she has to impersonate a slave for a resistance group to go into this academy, this fighting academy, where she meets a dark-skinned main male character who is trying to leave this academy because he doesn't feel like he is cut out for it. He just wants to escape the brutality of it. It's a very brutal, honest, and real book, just set in this fantasy world, and I really enjoyed the diversity within the first two books, and I'm also going to really enjoy the diversity within this book, because we have a main couple who is dark-skinned, and I think that is just very important. But also, these two main characters, they go through a lot of hardship. It's told through dual points of view, but in the first book it's told through 2 points of view. Within the second and third book, it is told through, It is told through 3 points of view. And yeah, but within the main relationship within this series, it's very strong, it's very real, and it's very emotional. And they both can communicate, actually. They can both communicate, because that's the most important thing to do in a relationship, is communicate and have real conversations. And I haven't read this third one yet, but I've heard it's very, very tense, and it's very intense, and it's very emotional. So I'm really excited to read this book. I'm probably gonna read this over Thanksgiving, so yeah. And then the last book that I have to talk about today is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. Now let me be clear, I read the first 109 pages of this. I read the first, 12 chapters. Incredible novel of what I've read. This story is basically Black Panther, but with West African mythology into it. It's like Black Panther, West African mythology is weaved into the story, and it takes place within this fantasy island world that's inspired by Africa. And I think it's set in like the fantasy version of Africa too. And we have 3 black main characters who are of African and Nigerian descent. And these 3 main characters are incredible. They are flawed. They are beautiful within their own ways. It's very important to have a book like this out in the world today. It took forever for her to get this out, for her to get this novel. She said, if you've seen her on Good Morning America, Tomi Adeyemi, she was rejected. No, until someone finally believed in her, believed in the story, thought the story was amazing, because it is so far, and picked up this book that'll show people of color, children of color, teenagers of color, maybe even adults of color, that they can see themselves, they're able to see themselves in a story, not where they're being not where they're being taught something, not when they're being told something, not when they're being put down, when they're being the main characters of a fantasy story, and they can be badass and strong. And I can't wait to read the rest of this incredible story. It's incredible so far. They're already making a movie out of it. The second one's coming out in a month from today, I think. It comes out on December 3rd, and I'm really excited to read the next gazillion pages of this, because it is so incredible so far. The main characters are flawed, they're beautiful, they have their own quest to go on, physically and emotionally and mentally and internally. They have a lot of issues to deal with. They have a lot of issues to deal with being women, because in this story there are 2 main female characters who, one of them is kind of poor. She is in the lowest of the low. But in this world, magic has been taken away from her clan. Magic has been taken away from everyone in this kingdom. And she and her brother, who is also dark-skinned, decide to go on this quest to bring magic back to their kingdom. The other main female character is a higher up hierarchy princess who is of dark-skinned descent as well. And her father, the king, has been killing off the magical beings and has eradicated magic for all these years. She decides to take matters into her own hands when her best friend, who is also a person of color, is killed. She decides to go on this quest with the main female character and her brother, and they all decide to bring magic back together. And the other main character that you hear from 3 characters in this novel. And the 3 main characters' voices are very different, incredible, and they all have their own situations going on. And the main male character is the princess's brother. Now, the prince, he has been sent by his father to go out and capture his sister and the girl, Zaylee, on the front cover. That's Zaylee on the front cover. He has been sent to go and get his sister and get the girl back, Zaylee. And he has to kill Zaylee, and he has to bring his sister back to please his father, because, as his father said before, duty before anything else. Failure is not an option. And he basically has to struggle with what's more important. Being respectful and being disciplined toward his father. Having the discipline to do what someone tells you to do, or believing in himself, saying that, no, we should bring magic back. Magic's important. I don't care what my father says. I'm bringing magic back with you guys, and I'm helping you. So he has to really struggle with his inner conflict. What's more important? Being loyal to my people, or being loyal to these strangers that I've really come to care for, but also not just these strangers, my sister And what if I have magic? Am I just supposed to let that go and have my father take that away from me and everyone else, or should I fight for it? So I can't wait to read the next like a million pages of this. Like I said before, it's so good so far. So that's basically it. Sorry if this video was kind of ranty and long, but I just wanted you guys to hear my opinion about how diversity is important in literature, because overall it's important to talk about. It's important to have diversity in books, in movies, in TV shows. So yeah, that's basically it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in my next video soon. Alright, you guys know what to do. Like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in my next video. Okay, bye guys.